Welcome to the Better Buy, where I give you the information you need on the stuff that you want so that you can make the better buy. This video is not sponsored by Skippy. I'm going to be doing a factory reset of the Go 3, and I'm going to use these to get this much closer to the camera for some filming stuff that I'm going to show you in a second. Kind of fun though, right? If I was sponsored by Skippy, that would be hilarious. Now, first thing we're going to do is reset the camera, and then I'm going to walk you through my setup process so that you can set up your camera as quickly as possible and get out filming as soon as you can. Here we go. The camera's already on, so I'm going to go ahead and tap it here, and then I'm going to do a factory reset. So I'm going to scroll down and swipe over. Now before I do this, I want to show you that the camera actually has footage already in it. So if I lift it up here, you can see if I swipe over, I've got 4 little clips in here. All right. The reason that that's important is that those clips are going to be there after the factory reset. So we're going to go ahead and pull this guy back out. And actually, this is going to be when we move these guys here. So check this out. We're going to throw Skippy right there, grab this guy right here, and boom. How's that for some, well, I don't know, ingenuity? I don't know what you want to call it. Now let's go ahead and swipe down here. And then I'm going to swipe over and hit the settings menu. And from here, we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where you can see factory reset. All right, I'm going to move this guy up here just a smidgen. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit factory reset, and you'll notice that it says it will not format the album, and that's because the images are still going to be left on the Go 3. Now, one thing to note is that the Go 3 does not have to be in the pod for any of this. It just works, all right? So we're going to leave that guy down there and hit confirm. And now the camera is resetting. What we're going to get to next is the screen that you will get to when you turn your camera on for the very first time. It's going to do that, and yeah, there we go. All right. So from here, I'm obviously going to select English because that's what I'm speaking. So we're going to tap next, and it's going to walk me through some menus. One of the first things that I need to do is turn the brightness way down. You'll see how it's kind of blurry right now because of my ISO. I'm going to go ahead and swipe over to here, and then I have to get through this little thing, which is going to show me where these settings are. Don't worry, we're going to go back through this in a second. I just need to get through them so that I can change the brightness. Now we can drop this guy way down, and this video is going to become much more user-friendly or watchable. So now you can see more of what's going on here. I think what if I turn it all the way? Ooh, that's beautiful. All right, so much better. If I swipe from this side, we're going to be able to see those in just a second. I'll show you that. So now that we've gone through the basic, like skip through the stuff to get to where I wanted to show you, let's go through these things. If you put the camera pod back in here just like this, I just want you to see that the footage is still there, all 4 clips, okay? So if you want to reset your camera, do not worry about losing the footage. It'll stay on the album and everything will be good. And now it's telling us that there's a live preview lag, obviously. So as they were showing from the beginning, if you swipe from the middle back and forth, that's where you can change your camera settings. If I tap here to the free frame mode, I don't know if I'm ever going to get over this Jiffy or this Skippy setup. Ooh, I cross-branded that. If I tap here, I'm going to scroll down until I get to the 50 frames per second because that's what I like to film with. 16:9, 1440, 50 frames per second. And that's my ratio, resolution, and frame rate. Now, if I tap this button right there, that's going to get me into these camera things, but as you just saw, you can just quickly swipe from the middle or through the middle and shift between your camera settings. If we swipe from the right side of the screen, you drag straight from the side, that's going to give you your settings for like the parameters for ISO and shutter speed and white balance and stuff like that. So the EV is where we can change the brightness if you're in auto, so you can dim or brighten the background or the image. And then this stuff right here, the vivid, is going to let you change the presets that they've included. So you can go with something like a standard, which is a moderate color, or you can go with a vivid, or you can go with flat. I tend not to go with any of the other ones, but it's up to you and your choice. All right. For the white balance, you can set your white balance for whatever you want, all the way up to 10,000 Kelvin. And if you don't know anything about white balance, it's really easy to Google some basic settings for different scenarios that you're in. I tend to leave the camera on auto for this. It does a good job. Most cameras do a pretty good job with this now. Every once in a while, you might run into some issues. If we swipe back over, we have the manual option. The thing about manual is that's going to let you change your shutter speed and your ISO. I follow the 180-degree rule when it comes to shutter speed, so because I am filming at 50 frames per second, I want my shutter double that. So it's going to be 100. If I was filming at 25, I would set the shutter to 50, and that's 1/50. And if I was filming at 24, I would drop it to 1/48, except you can't actually do that with this one, so just be aware of that. The other thing is the shutter will only drop as low as the frame rates. So if you're filming at 24, you can get to 1/24. But if you're filming at 50, you can't get to anything below 1/50. You can go up all the way up to 1/8000th of a second. And that's what's going on there. So those are your shutter speed, just some basic stuff here for you to be aware of. I'm going to go ahead and show you the ISO as well, just so you know. The ISO goes all the way down to 100, okay? And then you can scroll it all the way up to 3200 ISO. Now, the way that ISO works is essentially it's increasing your camera's sensor's sensitivity to light. So if you have low ISO, it's not super sensitive to light. Think of it like you're kind of putting sunglasses on the camera, essentially. That'd be more like an ND filter. But if you go up to 3200, it's super sensitive to light, which means if you're in a dark setting, it's going to brighten that up a little bit. But when you do that, when you increase the sensitivity to light, you're going to increase the grain and the noise in the footage, and it's going to lower the quality. Just something to be aware of. Ideally, you want your ISO as low as possible for what you're dealing with. Oh, and then you can go up to 400 max. I didn't even know those were there. 3200 max. So I'm just going to put that back in auto and auto for the rest of this. And that's where we are. Now, when you're filming in free frame mode, this little section, the ultra, action, or linear, doesn't matter because you can change it in post, so it's not going to impact anything here. If we go from I already showed you from the left side, that's going to show us essentially all the footage that we filmed. If we swipe down from the top, we're going to get into the settings. Now, the first setting over here on the top left is going to be just the orientation lock, and all that means is that if you flip the screen up and over, it stays oriented that way. That's all that's going on. So it stays like that. If I was to turn this off, it would now flip over for us, as you can see. Okay, nothing super special about that, just something to be aware of, that is what the orientation lock is affecting. It's not affecting the camera, it's not affecting the action pod's movement necessarily, it's just for the screen. This little lock here is just going to lock the screen so that if you touch it or there's tapping or water or stuff, it's not going to impact it, and you have to swipe up to get out of that. Okay, now the next one is the sound. This was very important because when I first tapped this, I thought there was only 3 options: high, medium, or low. And what I discovered was there's a 4th option. It's just hidden: mute. And the mute is very important because when you're filming, if you would like to be discreet with this little sucker right here, ooh, I didn't even know that did that, then you don't want the sounds going off when you start recording, stop recording, turn the camera on, turn the camera off, sort of thing. So just something to be aware of. If there's times where you want it to be silent, you can just scroll down to the mute section, and now there will be no button, taps, sounds, whatever beeps. I'm going to go ahead and hit high again so you can hear it for the rest of the video. You've already seen the brightness because I turned that all the way down for this video, but realistically, I tend to keep it just above this little guy, like right there. It is way more than bright enough for basically any setting, except for super, super bright daylight, and even then, it's not too bad. If you go to this one right here, the bottom left, that's going to be the quick capture, and I'm going to show you that stuff in a second, but essentially it's an easy way to turn that setting on and off. Once we get to the settings, you'll understand why it's nice to have that there. But if that is turned off, then when you tap this button when the camera is turned off, so if the action pod and the Go 3 are turned off, if you press the record button, it'll automatically start recording if the quick capture is turned on. If it's turned off, then it won't do anything. So that's a protection. Now the next setting is going to be the voice control. If you turn this on, you can select your language, and then when you say start recording or stop recording, the camera will actually do it. So if I turn this on and I say start recording, you'll see that it's doing it. And now I've got this little video going on, and when I want to stop it, I will say stop recording, and it goes. So that is a super nice feature of the camera. You just need to be aware of it because if you do say that phrase or just the word stop or start, sometimes it'll do it anyway. All right. Now this pre-recording setting I'm not going to get into right now, but you have to have the Go 3 in the action pod to do that stuff. And that's just letting you capture a little bit of footage before you technically press record. That's for another video. This loop recording thing is very useful, or rather timed capture, sorry, not loop. Where you can set a time that you would like the camera to start recording. So you can set it somewhere, it can be turned off, but the camera internally knows what time it is because you set the time, and then it'll automatically start recording on that time, which is a nice little feature if you want to do sunrises or sunsets, or you're busy somewhere and you know that something's going to start at a specific time. You could start the camera recording when that time starts. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because I don't need it right now. Then what we're going to do is swipe over and we get to these settings. I personally keep the audio setting to wind reduction. I've done a lot of tests with that. In fact, if you go to the right side of the screen, you're going to see a little link pop up for my deep dive review of this camera. And that review goes through a whole ton of video, audio use settings and stuff to help you really understand this camera. This is mainly focused on a deep dive on the setup. I like to have the grid on because it shows me just the easy way to frame stuff, so I keep that way. And then if I go to settings, I'm going to show you a few things here, and then we should be done. So the first one is you click on general. This is going to let us see the vibration and the indicator light. I like to have the indicator light off if I'm filming my kids in a setting where I don't want them to pay attention to the camera, or if I'm like out in public and I'm just doing like basic B-roll stuff and I don't want to make it super obvious that I'm just recording things. This is not to be used in like a creepy way. Obviously you could use it as like a spy camera, if you will, or something, not to draw attention to it. But in general, it's nice to be able to turn that off. If I'm out on the surfboard, which is what happened to me, and I forgot to change that indication on, and when I turned the camera on, I didn't even know the camera was on. And when I would press record, I wouldn't even know the camera was recording. I had also turned off the sound, so I literally had no way of knowing if the camera was recording or not recording in visual or audio. So just be careful with that when you're doing it. If you have that thing turned on, it's a nice little reminder that the thing is on. Now, as far as the auto power off goes, I set both of these to never because I do not forget to turn the camera off, and I don't want it turning off by accident while I am filming or preparing to film. It's just annoying to me. So this also allows me to not have the quick capture on if I'm dealing with that, which I'll talk about more in just a second. Now, we've done the general stuff. Let's go to the quick capture settings. I'm going to turn quick capture on so we can see what's going on here. Basically, the quick capture settings, if the camera is turned off, you can double press or single press the camera and it will start recording in whatever you've set up. So if I scroll here and I hit shooting mode, I always set mine to free frame, and then I go custom parameters and I set it to 1440, 50 frames per second, 16:9, and I set my shooting parameters here to vivid, EV, and all that stuff, okay? And that's what I have set there. So the main reason for that is I like to be able to reframe in post. I also love their flow state stabilization. And so I use those two things a lot. Now, if I go back up, we're going to go to the double press option, and I'm going to change this to the video mode, and I want it to be 2.7K at the highest frame rates, and I'm going to set it to high stabilization. And that's just so that I know I'm getting decent stabilization at the highest quality with the highest frame rates. So if I ever want to get that 2.7K, I can grab it really quickly. You also want to make sure that you're aware of what you have here. Typically, when I'm doing the 2.7K, I keep it in flat because whenever I want to film in 2.7K, I want to be able to maybe do a little bit of editing afterwards. And then for the field of view, you do need to select this, so make sure you're aware of which field of view you want, and just look at those when you get there. I typically keep it in ultra pretty much all the time. Sometimes I'll go with linear. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go with linear for this, just because that way I know my 2.7K is filming in that linear frame, so I know that I'm getting that style of footage. All right, and that's pretty much the quick capture settings for the pod. And so what happens is if the camera is in the pod and everything is turned off, you can double tap to start recording in the 2.7K or whatever. If the camera is turned on, it's always only going to record in whatever the current settings are. So just be aware of that. The only way that these quick capture things work is if everything is turned off, and then you double press or single press to do it. Now that's when you have the pod attached to the camera. If you have the camera separate from the pod, like the pod has to be like wirelessly detached, you have to be far enough away, then you're going to use the Go 3 button settings. And what happens here is, once again, I set up the exact same settings so that I know exactly what I'm getting. So we're going to go in here, grab the 1440, set all of that stuff, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to the double press, and I'm going to change this to 2.7K for the video, because I know that's what I want. For a while, I would set this to the slow-mo, but I realized that the way that it's oriented on my surfboard means that the slow motion is always a vertical slow motion, and I just don't need it that much. I'd rather have the horizontal. So we're gonna go to the custom frame rate here, and I'm gonna hit 50 frames per second, and, 2.7K, 30, and this is going to be high. And that sets those up for me. The next thing that I'm going to do is just check my auto stuff to make sure that that's the same. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that that is on the flat setting because that's what I want. And then this is the ultra wide. I'm going to move this to linear just so I always know that that's what's going on. However, because this is the Go 3 and not when it's in the action camera, I might go ahead and set it to ultra or action, because whenever the camera isn't in the pod, I'm more than likely doing something very active. So just something to be aware of, but I'm going to keep mine in linear for now. Okay. And those are my setups for that portion. Now what we want to do is make sure we go to the video bitrate. I always keep that at high, and I change the sharpness to medium. So, and then I'm going to do the gyro calibration right now. So what you want to do is make sure your camera is sitting flat on something. Okay, I'm actually going to put it right there. So that's flat. And then we're going to hit the next button, and I'm going to start the calibration. And it doesn't take very long. The camera's usually pretty quick. And the reason for doing that is to make sure that when you're moving the camera around or you've got orientation stuff going on, it's working exactly as it should. Personally, I've only set that up one time when I was first setting the camera up, but it's easy enough to do that you could calibrate it regularly, maybe once a month or something, just to make sure that everything is good. And the rest of this is just as it is. So I'm actually going to set that down right there. And I would say that we are good to go. You should be completely ready to use your camera by the time you get it now, based on this video. I don't think there's really anything else you need to be aware of at this point. As far as like other setup information, I have my ultra deep dive review that you can go watch, which will walk you through a ton of extra information. And I've got just a whole playlist for the Go 3. Hopefully this video gave you everything you needed to make an informed decision just about buying this camera in general, or how to use this camera once you get it as far as the setup process goes. That was my goal here. If nothing else, I would love it if you could like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to keep delivering this kind of quality content for you, the consumer, because I want to give you the information you need on the stuff that you want so you can make the better buy. And I'll see you in the next one.